Jasper Snyder with the ARF. It's my pleasure to introduce some fascinating work this afternoon. One of the things that the ARF was most proud to be involved with last year was the Insights 2020 project, and the rubber is meeting the road this afternoon. We're going to hear from Chris Petranto from Millward Analytics and a fantastic panel here as to what happens, how do you really make a customer-centric business. So without further ado, let me introduce Chris. Thank you.
So thanks everyone for joining us this afternoon. I know I'm catching you after lunch, so we'll try to give you some energy back here. So I head up the strategic research and analytic arm of Millward Brown, and one of the units that I oversee is called MAPS. And we have a long legacy, among other things, of working and partnering with clients on their customer strategy. So this topic of customer centricity is really dear to our hearts. So I don't think anyone in this room will disagree with me when we say that the world is getting complex when we think about our customers. Increasingly, we are interacting, and they are interacting with us in many different ways, in a large number of ways. And in fact, many of our customers themselves are touch points for other customers. Okay, they're forcing us to think of our customers as really our ambassadors. So it's complex, and we have lots of challenges, whether you're a senior business manager or you're in insights and analytics, of really trying to figure out and understand how to best use your customer to grow your brand. So fortunately for us, my colleagues at Vermeer, part of Millward Brown, have spent the better part of the last year really getting to the core of what makes a successful brand successful. Okay, and they went and they designed a study that Jasper said, Insight 2020, that looked at that. So what is it that's common about all of these companies that are beating their peers and driving growth faster than others in their industry? And it really came down to one thing. Okay, what we always saw across the list was customer centricity. So being able to use their customer, focusing and organizing around the customer to drive a lot of business decisions. And if we dig a little deeper into that, they broke it into three groups. I'm not going to get into a ton of detail in Insight 2020 today, but I do want to use it as the backdrop. Actually, our colleagues will be spending the next hour and a half after we're done getting into a lot of detail around how clients and how brands are formed and using this information. But I wanted to touch on it because it provides a great backdrop to what some of my colleagues are going to talk about here. So three things that generally companies who are successful and who would be considered customer-centric are doing. So one is total experience. So really thinking about all the ways in which they interact with their customer. Number two, customer obsession. Okay, that means that it's part of their DNA, from the top to the bottom of the organization, making sure that the customer has a voice. And last, insights, engine. So using insights and analytics to really be the conduit for the customer to be part of the decision-making process and the strategy in the organization. Okay? And I'm going to put some data behind that. Again, I don't want to steal the thunder of this afternoon session, but three stats that I think really drive it home. So first, thinking about total experience. They did something I think quite clever. They looked at overperformers, that is businesses that are growing faster than their peers in their industry, versus underperformers, exact opposite. So if I think about total experience, overperformers who are creating consistency across all touch points, okay, much more successful than those who aren't. If I think about customer obsession, it's this idea that everywhere throughout the organization, the customer is infused. Okay, it's part of the marketing function, obviously, but it's also part of the HR function, the finance function. Everyone is making sure that the customer has their voice. And last, insights and analytics leading the business. Okay, which means that the customer has as big a seat at the table as all the business leaders, and they're helping drive that. So, it's a tough world out there, and I think the study has done a really good job of identifying what it is that makes these companies successful. But I think there's an additional challenge, which is bringing that to life and really understanding how brands, and successful ones at that, have really made this work for them. Okay, so getting past the what to the how. So today, we're going to talk about how successful brands are using insights about their customer to drive the growth. And I've brought some colleagues from the industry to help me talk and discuss what are some of these winning strategies. So I have Munoz from Southwest Airlines here today, Kelly Hewett, who's a professor at the University of Tennessee, but also spent some time building brands in the banking space, and Dan Whysong from IBM. Okay? So I'm going to give each of them a chance to talk about some of the winning strategies that they've employed. Okay? And hopefully we can get a discussion going around what makes brands successful in the space. All right. So with that, maybe I'll start with you, Isaac. If I think about Southwest Airlines, I think one of the things that makes it famous is the promises that it's making to its customers. And I'm interested in hearing how, in your role, you really brought that to life.
Definitely. Hello, everybody. I'll stand up to continue the trend. So, Southwest Airlines. How many of you have flown with Southwest Airlines? Yes. Okay. So let me rephrase the question. How many of you have not flown with Southwest Airlines? Okay. Can I take your name really quick? No? Okay. Because I want to understand why. So I work for Southwest Airlines, and I love my job. I really do. And I think it was very interesting for us to hear today, right? It was the insight, the experience, right? Making sure that we really are able to be obsessed with the customer. And at Southwest Airlines, we truly are obsessed with our customer. For those of you who have flown with us, you know and you have probably seen or heard some of our jokes. And the beautiful thing is that when you come to our headquarters for training, we don't train you on the jokes. That's just part of the culture. The key differentiator that we have is just hiring the people that epitomize the brand values, the core brand values. And so my job is in customer intelligence. And sounds very sexy. It is. But if you think about customer intelligence, we're housed in marketing. But like we were saying earlier today, we're here to help the company. So my job is to make sure that I can provide insights across the company. So what do I mean by that? I help with our sports sponsorships. I help with our international expansion. I help with diversity and inclusion. And I help with advertising. A couple of other things. But today, I'm going to spend a little bit of time on advertising and how customer centricity looks when the customer is literally living it, right? If you think about it, customer centricity is a lot about analyzing data. And I'm going to spend a little bit of slides with some of the data points, but the other two panelists are going to talk a little bit more into the data points. My job today is just to show you how at Southwest Airlines, we care so much about how much we spend in advertising that I'm going to show you a couple of ads. Now, with that said, within customer experience, within customer intelligence, you divide it into three: customer experience, brand, and policy work. I spend most of my time with brand. Why do I spend my time with brand? Because I need to hear what the customer has to say. I need to hear the customer perspective. And the brand affects many things, right? Yes, experience is very important. Yes, policy is very important, right? Bags fly free, no change fees. Those things matter. But at the end of the day, right, the customer's perception is the reality. And I know that we hear that all the time, but it is true. And the more time I spend with this, qualitatively, quantitatively, this really comes to mind. And this really comes to fruition. As you evaluate where we fly across the nation, that geography changes, right? In Atlanta, there's another airline. I cannot remember the name, but they're a big airline, right? If you go to Boston, another airline, I cannot remember the airline, but right now my mind is really going blank. But when you think of Southwest Airlines, that really is the airline that you should remember. So with that said, I have three things as to how I perceive everything that I do. Customer needs, brand story. How can we deliver on the brand story? And three, and this is a very important one when it comes to customer experience, how can you deliver from an operational standpoint? And at the end of the day, we think of marketing. And we think of marketing, it's like, well, yeah, how can you improve the message? No, at the end of the day, really nothing comes to life if it's not through operations. So if you think about the 4 ways of generating revenue with our customers, and this is how we think about it. This can probably apply for your brands, from your customers. But for our standpoint, we want to make sure that, one, we have retention strategies, right? We want to make sure that those segments, right, as we have all segmented, but I mean, we have segmented our most profitable customers, and we want to make sure that those that are engaged with us stay with us, right? That they don't go flirt with other airlines. We don't like that, right? We want to love our passengers and our passengers to love us back. right? Development. So at the end of the day, customers keep evolving, keep changing. Their needs are going to change, right? But so they need to be aligned with our brand story. We need to make sure that we continue to develop with them, reactivate. So that only happens through the collection of data. Right? If I'm able to see that Isaac, myself, has not traveled with Southwest Airlines over the last 12 months, I want to know why, right? Was it a life stage change? Was it a job change? Was it because their job no longer requires to travel because their industry is changing? Whatever it is, that only happens through reactivation. I want to make sure that I continue to engage with them throughout their life process. And then last but not least, acquisition. So it is important that our planes are always full. And right now they really are. But we want to make sure that there's also different ways of thinking as to how the plane is full, right? Not all passengers and not all customers are the same. Yes, they are, and we are an egalitarian airline, but they all pay for a little bit of different prices, right, depending on when you buy the ticket. So we need to make sure that we have those of you guys that did not raise your hand, or that raised your hand and said you haven't traveled with us. I want to know why. Why have you not traveled with us? Is it awareness? Is it experience? Is it loyalty to another airline? Those things really matter when it comes to customer centricity. Now, when you come to knowing your customers, we want to make sure that we interact at all points in time, right? And that is the one thing of doing it. When it comes to research, we think of it as social, we think of it as ethnography, we think of it as fly-alongs, we think about quantitative surveys, behavioral, attitudinal. We want to do all of the above. We really are not married to one method. And the biggest key thing here for us to remember is that the question should drive the methodology, okay? And so as we think about it, and we're always like, oh, we have this new method. I hear you, but what is the question that we have to answer? And that happens internally quite a bit. They come to customer intelligence, they say, I need to know for this and this. I'm like, oh, okay, but what is the business question? Because if they don't come with a business question, we cannot address how this is going to influence the brand. Okay, and then under that, we have to understand the customer. Yes, we've heard of big data. Yes, we do have data scientists internally. But at the end of the day, we are not only interested in the what or the how, but really the why. So it's a combination of both. We need to make sure that we understand both the numbers and the text. Okay? And then this is very important. Again, operational factors really, really differentiate Southwest Airlines. And so some of we have 48,000 plus employees, right? So in the majority of them, one, are union, which is not a surprise, and two, they really are spending quite a bit of time with our customers. We need to engage with our flight attendants. We need to make sure that they tell us their stories, because guess what? They are living the brand on a day-to-day basis, right? As much and as engaged as we want to be from a headquarters standpoint, if we are not spending time with our operations, we're not going to be able to connect. And we do, actually. We do spend quite a bit of time with our operations. Okay? And we have maximizing value, which we're a low-fare airline. And we really are a low-fare airline. So we want to make sure that every interaction that we have with our customer really is going to be developing that relationship. That is key for us because that is one of our brand promises. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in the next couple of slides. And then last but not least, no customer is the same and no customer stays the same. Yes, there are patterns of behavior, but really, we do change quite a bit. We say what we want, but we really don't act on it. So we need to make sure that we follow through to make sure what truly is motivating their behavior. Okay. Now, if before this, when we were thinking about how we were going to show you customer centricity, we could go through many data slides, through many data points, but it's after lunch, so we need to get you a couple of just quick slides and then get you laughing, hopefully. So when we think of Southwest Airlines and then the brand identity, we needed to think inside out. Okay? What I mean by that? And I don't mean the movie, although it was great, by the way. If you guys haven't seen it, I recommend. But if you, that was a Pixar movie, just in case. Okay. And then if you really think about how we were going to evolve the brand, right? We were sitting with our chief commercial officer, and he said, you know what? As we continue to expand internationally, we need to make sure that our brand is going to resonate. It's like, okay, that makes sense. We need to make sure that we are communicating what we stand for, right? And the best way of doing it is through our brand identity. Now, we cannot just go out there and change for the sake of changing, because we are a 40-plus airline, years-plus airline, right? We have loyal customers. We have customers that see our planes and they say, that's a Southwest Airlines plane, right? The blue belly. Those things really matter to the customer. And so we couldn't just go in and change. Now, internally, likewise goes with our employees. Our employees are extremely vested in the airline, right? Not because it's a union-based, no. because they love the airline, because we are the love airline. So after spending quite a bit of time with research, we evaluated multiple platforms, different colors, different logos, and we spent quite a bit of time here in New York and in different other places across the US, especially now that we're flying internationally. We also wanted to make sure that we connected internationally. So we tested over 60 plus branding items. We had 23 platforms. We talked to over 6,000 people, okay? That was not just something that's like, you know what, let's get a couple of it. No, 6,000 people plus our employees. Okay, we had 450 slides shared with our executives, and I wanted to put that up because we all spend quite a bit of time with slides and PowerPoints. Well, 450 slides, you think about it, and each one of them had a lot of data, so we had to really make sure that we just focus on the key nuggets. We visited a couple of countries, and 192 cups of coffee consumed. That does not include alcohol. Okay, beer or wine. So just so you know. All right, so before I share with you the next three slides, the next slide that you'll see, it's we landed on our heart, right? We wanted to make sure that the heart logo was prominent, right? We wanted to make sure that the heart, we were going to reshape, if you will, right, how we thought about Southwest Airlines. And so when we landed on this heart, it was going to be at the belly of our plane. Why? Because after talking to our customers and our employees, we realized that our customers knew that they were at our heart. They are the heart of the airline. Our employees are the heart of the airline. So as you see our planes fly, right, the heart is at the bottom, and it's no longer a red belly. That was a huge change. Okay, huge change. So that was one thing. Two, the Southwest logo is going to be prominent on the side of the plane. Three, we noticed that our creative, our advertising, was getting too slapstick humor, and that's not really who we are. We wanted to go a little more witty humor. We needed to make sure that within our segmentation, as we tried this, that those customers that were spending the most time with us, the most profitable, were the ones that were our brand ambassadors, were really enjoying this new humor that we're going after. And then last but not least, that the experience, right, that our flight attendants and our pilots and our gate agents were proud of wearing this heart. And so thus far, it has been very, very good, very well received. And so let's play this first spot, because at the end of the day, without a heart, it's just a machine.
This is a different kind of airline. One that invented low fare so everyone could fly. One that decides where to go next by putting your needs first. And knows people are its most powerful fuel. Some say we do things differently. We say, why would we do things any other way? Without a heart, it's just a machine.
Without a heart, it's just a machine. And you can think of all other airlines and think about what other airline can really claim that. And if you can come up with somebody else, talk to me afterwards and we can talk about it more. But so you notice that those are our employees. And they are employees that have been with the company for years. We have auditions so they can come to us and they want to be a part of the commercial, right? That is customer centricity coming to life. Why? Because whenever you see that commercial, you know that those are not real actors. I mean, there are actors, but there are our employees. That's how much they matter to us. So when our employees see the commercial live, they're proud of it. They're proud of the brand. So that was in 2015. In 2016, we did a little bit of research. It was low fare leadership research, making sure that we understood our customer. Again, based on our segmentation, we wanted to make sure that we were going to be delivering on low fares, on reliability, on transparency, on honesty. And so we came up with the term transparency. So if you haven't seen our ad, here it is.
We're about to show you an incredibly low fare. Like all our fares, you get 2 free bags and 0 change fees. Because what's the point of an incredibly low fare if you're just going to stack fees on top of it? Our sale fares have nothing up their sleeves. Book them now at southwest.com. Low fares, nothing to hide. That's transparency.
We spend a lot of time and money on advertising. We use advertising to always be top of mind. We use advertising based on the research that we've done because we know that our brand ambassadors really enjoy it. We know that our customers, even those who have flown us less, they're actually tweeting about it quite a bit. So there's a lot of engagement. So for us, yes, it's always to be on top of mind, but it's also to make sure that the brand is resonating across the board, right? That our brand ambassadors truly are advocates of ours. So much so that during social, there are specific customers that they take it upon themselves to continue to educate people. That's beautiful. And because we always want to be top of mind, I'll close with this.
You will fly Southwest. You will fly Southwest. You will go to southwest.com and book a flight. Is it working? How about now? Now?
Okay. Thank you.
So Isaac, you're certainly passionate about getting the customer's voice into the business strategy. I'm curious, overall, how would you say that this has benefited the airline? Bottom line, what's happening?
So when it comes, I was not joking when I said we want for you guys to consider us first. That is one of the most important metrics. Based on the correlations that we've ran, if you are top of mind consideration, then you're more likely to fly us. When you do the analysis across the US, we are the top airline considered. So, and this advertising has actually strengthened that. So much so we fly 1 of every 4 people in the US. And we continue to expand internationally. So as we continue to do the analysis, we are the top of mind airline within our segments. The second airline is so far from where we are, low in consideration. So it has strengthened that idea that we had that we needed to be the number 1 leader. Because at the end of the day, we want to deliver on our key promises. And I'll close with this. We want to be the most flown, the most profitable, and honestly, the third one is equally important, the most loved airline in the world. So we'll hear Dan talk about the audacious goals that IBM has, but those are ours. Most flown, most profitable, and most loved. And so we continue to try to deliver on that.
So before I let Dan do that, I'm going to actually ask Kelly to join the discussion. So Kelly, I know that you've returned to academia, but before that you did a lot of research in the banking space. Wonder if you could share some of your thoughts and research, particularly on how brands interact with the customer and vice versa.
Sure, thanks. I'll take Whysong's lead and stand. And unfortunately, I didn't bring any commercials. I've transitioned out of the banking world. So as mentioned, I spent about 5 years with Bank of America in the corporate marketing group, leading an insights and strategy group before I transitioned back to academia. I've sort of been back and forth my whole career. But I spent the years 2008 to 2013 with Bank of America. So like a lot of you will recognize that was a pretty scary time to be in banking. I have to admit I woke up a few times and thought, what in the world have I done? But it was also quite rewarding to have actually been in charge of a lot of decisions that were made during that time period and dealing with some of the turmoil. So as I transitioned back to academia, I wanted nothing more than to try to really study as an academic some of the things that I had witnessed while I was having to take care of a lot of more important day-to-day tasks. So I'm going to start us off with a slide of, this is something I observed when I was at Bank of America. What you're seeing here is word of mouth via social media buzz about the Bank of America brand over that period of 2007 to the end of 2013. And the reason that you see the sort of flat line at the beginning is simply that it was just starting to grow in use in '08, and so we just weren't seeing as much. So it's not that the brand buzz was flat. It was just that social media was just really starting to take off. And so I've called out a few things that were happening in the banking industry associated with some of these big spikes, and some of you might be familiar with some of these, like the Occupy Wall Street movement, the now infamous Bank of America's decision to announce a debit usage fee during that same time period, settlements for robo-signing, settlements for lawsuits regarding Merrill Lynch. But what we observed was that social media word of mouth very much spiked during certain periods, and we would see a mirroring effect in other aspects of the overall brand communications environment, all of which were impacting our customers, their perceptions of the brand, and their overall experiences. So if we can go to the next slide, I'll try to illustrate this big system that was impacting our customers. So this is actual news articles. So we looked at the top 25 outlets based on circulation in the United States. And so this is volume of news buzz about the Bank of America brand over that same time period. So again, you don't see that flat line because the news itself was pretty well entrenched. But we see similar spikes through some of these same events, such as the Occupy Wall Street movement, the Bank of America debit fee scandal, et cetera, et cetera. So customers were very much talking about the brand during some of these events, but the more critical thing for a brand is what's happening in terms of customer experience and customer perceptions or brand sentiment. And so I have a reflection of that on the next slide. And we actually see exactly the mirroring of those spikes in terms of negative sentiment. So, for example, where you see the debit fee announcement had a positive spike in buzz, it has a very extreme negative spike in consumer sentiment. So, as a marketer working in that world, trying to figure out what this means for performance, for the customer experience, was something I was very interested in studying. So I set about as an academic to study it in a much broader environment and looked at the top 4 banks during this time period. So what I'm going to share with you next are our findings regarding 4 banks. So Bank of America, Chase, Citi, and Wells Fargo. So if we can go to the next slide. On the left, what you see is my sort of conceptual view of this brand communications environment in which consumers are interacting with these various influences over time. So we have the firm itself contributing, and so we captured advertising, we captured social media word of mouth that the brands were communicating themselves, and we looked at traditional press releases as well. So over that time period, we have pretty much a census of all those activities. We have traditional media news stories for all 4 banks. We have word of mouth, buzz, that was not being contributed by the brands themselves, contributed by others. We're measuring customer sentiment, and we also captured performance. So we chose to look at performance in terms in banking. There are a lot of issues that impact things like stock value that are not directly tied to customer behavior because of write-offs and things like that. So we looked at deposits. So the level of money people are keeping in a bank. Are they taking their money out? Are they keeping it in? Are they adding to it? And so our view was that you not only were going to have these things interacting, this is truly a reverberating system where there's a two-way relationship between all of these inputs. And the challenge for firms is to figure out how they can take control. Okay? How do we take control and hopefully influence a positive customer experience, a positive effect on consumer sentiment, but then also make sure we're safeguarding our stakeholders and affecting firm performance. So the results in a snapshot are we found direct empirical evidence for this system. So we found, with the exception of a few things, that every one of these paths exists and in both directions. So then the question is, what do firms do about this? So we dug a little deeper on the firm sentiment issue in particular. So one of the biggest lessons and what's relevant for this panel is customer sentiment about your brand is directly and significantly impacting performance. So for these 4 brands, there's very, very tangible evidence that it does matter what your customers are saying about your brand and how they're feeling in terms of sentiment. So what influences sentiment then is the next question we sought to explore. Well, we found 2 things that firms don't directly control, and that's what others are saying about the brand in social media. So social media word of mouth is critically important and has a direct and very, very significant impact on what customers are feeling about a brand. And in addition, what the media is saying is very, very important for driving customer sentiment. So what does a brand do? What does a customer customers' experience having been impacted by these other two sources, how can we as a firm, as a brand, influence customer sentiment? Well, the good news is we actually found that what a firm says does matter. Importantly, we found that press releases are surprisingly effective. Okay? We also found that what firms say in social media is also surprisingly effective for influencing customer sentiment. We actually found that advertising almost bypasses it and has a direct effect on performance, and not so much directly influencing that brand experience metric. So I think, kind of mirroring a little bit about Isaac's thoughts about how important it is, that brand experience, we're showing tangible, concrete evidence that it does matter, at least in this context. Okay. All right, I'm going to close with that.
I have a question. So
Yes.
You mentioned that in the world of academia, you had the ability to go and look across several different brands and evaluate both the opportunities and the risks of those who may embrace social media or word of mouth in some way and others other way. Talk about that. Talk about what are the opportunities that exist, and maybe contrast that with some of the risks
Sure.
of brands who didn't do such a great job.
Sure. So I'm glad you asked that question, actually. So having looked at 4 brands, one of our next steps was to look at all these relationships within each of the brands to see if we could learn some lessons about what companies were doing things right and which companies might have been doing things that weren't working so well. And we learned some really interesting things. So I'll just pull out a couple of them. So one of the things we observed was, in terms of social media strategy, that one of the firms, and surprisingly it was Bank of America, it surprised me, I worked there, happened to be doing a particularly effective job of managing their own social media strategy, how the bank leveraged social media at the time. And most of the others were not particularly effective, and we dug a lot deeper into what the data were telling us, and the thing that really stood out to us was, first of all, Bank of America was making much, much, much more substantial use of it. So on the magnitude of 5 to 10 times as much use of social media. Secondly, 90+% of the social media contributions from Bank of America over that time period were from customer service accounts. So, think Twitter. Instead of using it as a promotional vehicle to advertise and promote the brand, they were reaching out to customers who had experienced problems, who had commented on the brand or an experience issue in social media, and we're talking one-on-one with those customers. So instead of one-to-many, using social media as a way to build relationships with customers. And our data suggests that that is by far the most effective use of social media. That's one of the things that we observed. In terms of press releases, it was the opposite. Bank of America was the least effective. The most effective was Wells Fargo over this time period. And using some computational linguistics, we dug into what they were doing differently. And the high-level result was that Wells Fargo was not parroting back negativity from the media in their press releases. They were using press releases to announce products, to talk about conferences they were speaking at, that sort of thing, and not sort of letting the media drag them down into that sort of negativity spiral. Whereas Bank of America might be responding to lawsuits or things like that, and that negativity was coming across in their press releases. And so that was a big lesson we learned, was use press releases more as a way to deflect as opposed to directly respond. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
And last but not least, Dan, you've been very patient. You also have a very important role in bringing the customer, or the client, as you might call it, voice as part of the strategy. And it occurs to me, we have a different audience, of course. We're in B2B space, and we also have the challenge of very long decision cycles. Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping you can talk to us a little bit about your experiences in instilling the customer and how that works in an organization like IBM.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I'd be happy to.
All right.
We're a little cozy here, so I think
Yeah,
I'll...
please. We'll spread out.
Again, thanks for this opportunity to allow us to present and share what we've learned as an organization. First of all, I apologize for anyone who may have been hoping to see Watson up here and present this. Watson's pretty busy these days and ways beyond just shooting new commercials for us. So I've been working for IBM for about 15 years now. And just in that rather short time frame of 15 years, we've undergone a significant amount of brand transformation, client transformation initiatives within the company. When I first started working there and came into the office, you would see IBM printers all over the office. Everyone had an IBM ThinkPad, and of course, you had your share of servers throughout the company. And a lot of those business lines, all those product lines we've divested from over the course of the year, so we really had to significantly shift how we think about client experience and how we manage our brand and people's perceptions of our brand over the course of that transformation. During that time, I've been in market intelligence throughout all 15 of those years in different roles throughout the organization, initially starting off in brand management and then transferring into client experience management, managing actually one of our largest customer satisfaction trackers that takes place 24/7 in every country I do business with around the globe. And then lately, I find myself now in a role where I'm managing a brand health tracker. Equally as large for a brand health tracker. It's actually conducted in 40 different countries worldwide now. And we've been running this brand tracker since the launch of the Smarter Planet campaign in 2009. So it's been giving us the benefit of a lot of longitudinal analysis and the ability to learn a lot more about how client experience and brand health relate to one another. And so as a result of being personally in charge in some of that, I can see the two are inextricably related and they kind of provide a check and balance to one another. You might want to make sure in an organization that you don't fall in the trap of becoming too focused purely on measuring client experience just for the sake of managing client experience. And likewise with brand, you don't want to fall into the trap of brand measurement just for the sake of managing your brand. What an organization really needs to help guide those efforts and kind of serve as a beacon is a corporate character that makes sure everybody is marching to the same drum, make sure everybody is heading, all of your efforts are concentrated around one single unified purpose for the organization, and a purpose that serves your clients and your stakeholders. If you want to go to the next slide, please. I will talk about that a little bit more in depth on the next slide, but before I get there, I want to discuss some of the challenges that we face within market intelligence, within IBM, and I'm sure they're challenges that we know everyone faces in every business, regardless of whether it's B2C or whether it's B2B. A lot of these challenges are predicated upon just demand for providing proof of return on investments for our marketing communications and for our client experience efforts. And even beyond that, taking it to the next level and drawing not just that kind of causal linkage to performance metrics like increase in pipeline or increases in revenue, but actually being able to provide predictive information, predictive recommendations to help drive the business. In a B2B company such as ours, this becomes extremely challenging. We can't just launch a marketing campaign or a customer satisfaction initiative and go out and measure the effects of this a day later and expect to see revenue improve for the company. We're not selling candy bars that you can buy in a checkout line going through the grocery store. The types of products and services and solutions that we offer to our clients usually involve transformational change within that organization, something that's of very strategic importance to those companies and involves multiple decision makers within those organizations. Because of the importance of those types of decisions, it can also take very long purchase cycles. We've seen when we try to measure the impact of even broad sweeping changes in our marketing campaigns or an investment in our marketing campaigns, that you often won't see those results reflected in revenue for the company as much as a year to 18 to 24 months out. So this makes developing a deep understanding of lag effects, sales cycles, decay rates, very difficult to do in a company like this. In fact, even some of the transformations that we're going through now change your modeling of those types of effects. For one day, you can think you have a very keen understanding of what lag effects are within your organization, what the sales cycles are, and then we develop a new way of engaging clients and allowing them to buy our products and services through means like cloud delivery that shorten those sales cycles and shorten the time for which a customer can hear about your product or service and go out and actually purchase it. So how do you go about instituting a measurement framework, whether it's client experience or whether it's brand measurement, that can help not solve some of these issues, but make them a little bit easier for the company? If you don't mind. To do that, the very first priority in an organization, whether you're a new organization or whether you're an organization that's over 100 years old, is defining or reaffirming what that enterprise's corporate character is. As I mentioned earlier, the corporate character is like that guiding beacon that makes sure everyone is marching to the single mission, to the single purpose. For IBM, it's that we're essential. We're essential not just to our customers, but we're essential to society in general. And we do that through making sure This would be the one area where I would not get this right. We do that through making sure that the world works smarter. And, and that's evidenced in our values. So it's evidenced in who we are. And so we have just 3 values within the organization. First and foremost is dedication to every client's success. Secondly, it's innovation and expertise in ways that matter. And again, not just for our clients, for us as a corporation, and for society overall as well. And then it's personal responsibility, trust and personal responsibility in everything that we do as an IBMer. Those values then can be applied and can be communicated throughout the organization in what we tend to call a looks-like framework. And so basically this provides guidance that is specific to every role, every individual within the organization that helps them better understand what IBM's corporate character is and what that should look like when a person engages with us, what it should sound like, what the organization really thinks like, and then, of course, what we perform like. When you have this framework developed and people have a very good understanding of this framework, you find that it begins to become adopted not just within your business plans, but within your financial plans, within your marketing plans, even within your human resource plans. And one of the great benefits about that is once you have that level of adoption with the organization, people start setting goals to it. And as they start setting goals to it, then they come to you asking, well, how do we make sure that we're measuring these goals and measuring progress on these goals? And that's a client of market intelligence. That's a conversation that anyone in market intelligence really wants to have whenever the organization is centered around a common goal or common framework. Much more difficult to do when you have people in different divisions in the organization suggesting that their brand should be measured differently or their business unit should be measured differently from someone else's business unit or have different goals in the organization that conflict with one another. So the biggest benefit of this, if you go to the next slide, is that you can then put together a measurement framework that aligns key outcome metrics, or you could call them key performance indicators, across your constituent groups within the organizations, your buyers, your influencers, your employees, around a very simple to understand architecture. In this case, the example we're using here is belief, action, and advocacy. And it's interesting, Isaac, one of the things that you mentioned was the importance of unaided consideration for Southwest Airlines. Unaided consideration, we found, does tend to be one of the best measures for evidence of belief. And that's basically what you look for in these outcome metrics. What evidence can you provide that you're seeing engagement inspire belief in your brand that then results in action and people engaging more deeply with you, and as a result of that action, becoming brand advocates for your company. And for a company like us, that's extremely important, especially the brand advocate piece. We're constantly providing new means for our clients to do, to innovate and change their company through new technologies, through new services. And if you've ever followed, if you watch, you're familiar with the IT adoption model, you know that roughly only about 10 to 13% of people are going to be those early adopters, those early believers in any type of new technology. What you really need to do is capitalize on those early believers and those early innovators and use them as trailblazers to help pave the path forward for the early and late majority. These are the guys that provide proof in the concept of that innovation or that technology that you're bringing to market. So for us, belief, action, and advocacy is a model that works really well. It can be used to provide you with these outcome metrics. They can provide some really easy to evaluate heat maps for your organization. They can even be rolled together into a single brand health indicator or client experience indicator if you want for your organization. Something you have to be careful of. I sometimes liken that if you get too much of a focus on that to trying to fly something like one of Isaac's 747s with a single instrument, maybe just the altimeter. It's not a plane I would want to be on. Most importantly is that these outcome metrics link down to more detailed diagnostics within your organization. They start at the highest level and they'll go the whole way down, clear down to how each individual within the company interacts with its clients. When you have that, you're bringing together data from multiple sources across key audiences to deliver deep and timely insights to the organization in a manner which will make sure that the actions that they undertake are reflective of the corporate character you know that your company needs to drive.
All right. Very good, Dan. I think Jeff